Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got some major updates in regards to the Israel Iran situation, the conflict. Iran still hitting back at Israel, and Israel demanding the United States to formally, officially join Israel. What does that mean? Does that mean Israel is requesting U.S. troops? They have already got U.S. support, and we're going to talk about that, but they requested it according to Axios, and Trump and the administration have denied that. And Trump put out a statement on Truth Social earlier, updating everyone. The military parade was yesterday. All of the protests were yesterday. There was, unfortunately, two representatives in Minnesota that were killed, not in relation to the protests, at least not in terms of the protests happening during it. It was more so somebody that did have a No Kings, which was the protest, flyers in his car, but I'm not going to discuss that in this video. This is about Israel, Iran. This is about what Trump is saying about potential peace, and it's being reported, whether or not this is actually true. It is being reported that Iran wants to come to the negotiating table. Does that really mean anything, considering the U.S. and Iran have had five rounds of talks, and since these strikes by Israel, it's also been reported there was coordination between the United States and Israel, with Trump and Netanyahu potentially faking out Iran, which helped contribute to the devastating nature of the initial hit from Israel. There's also people saying, no, that's false. That's Israel lying. Trump really wanted diplomacy. And I do believe that Trump did for a while want diplomacy, because he knows that another Middle Eastern war, even with the vagueness surrounding, well, we're not going to deploy troops. I'm guessing that's the MAGA administration red line. They're saying we're not doing this. They cannot do it, by the way. Their administration would, I mean, you're talking about deploying troops in 2025 after we finally got out of Afghanistan, after the disaster in Iraq, the disaster in Vietnam. It just can't happen. And I had said that this nuclear deal needed to happen. And whether or not people want to say, well, let me just break it down really quickly when it comes to uranium enrichment, because people are saying, and I understand the idea that, oh, Iran doesn't really have the enrichment. They're not close to the level that's needed for a nuclear bomb. This is just a ploy by Israel to topple their government and weaken them while their proxies are also weak. People are saying that. They've talked about Iran being close to a nuclear bomb since the 90s. And so the reason why I do think there could be more credence to them being close, if they're at 60% enrichment, they're about 2 to 3 weeks away from a nuclear capable weapon. If you've listened to the experts, and you could even argue, well, maybe it's closer to where they're not disclosing some of their uranium enrichment levels, but the enrichment levels themselves must be reported and must be independently judged by the International Atomic Energy Agency. And so they're the ones that have reported the 60% enrichment. 60% enrichment means they're about a month, maybe give or take 2 or 3 weeks away from a nuclear capable weapon. That's what 60% means. So if they are at 60%, yes, they are close. Now, you could argue that those numbers are false. Who really knows? It's the fog of war. We've seen the situations in the past in terms of weapons of mass destruction, the lies to get the U.S. to invest significantly into these Middle Eastern conflicts. They're not popular at all. And that's why I said, for the administration, give them their 3% enrichment, whatever it is. I'm going to get to this. This is me rambling. Let's get to the actual news here. But we've got, this was Hegseth. This is from Trump. It's Truth Social. They're amplifying it on X. In a screenshot, the U.S. has had nothing to do with the attack on Iran tonight. What does he mean by tonight? If this came out 4 minutes ago, maybe he was talking about when it happened. So it would have been 2 days ago was the attack, and then Iran really responded. Or maybe there was another attack by Israel. There's attacks around the clock. So he's referencing just in general these attacks, just like Rubio put out the initial statement. The U.S., we're separating ourselves. We're not involved in this. This is Israel's war, is what Trump is saying, which is loaded because the U.S. funds Israel. So, but Trump is trying to make it seem like, well, this is really just Israel. They're going at it solo. We know that's not true, but I understand the swing of the administration, because tethering yourself to a Middle Eastern war in 2025 is extremely unpopular. If we are attacked in any way, shape, or form by Iran, the full strength and might of the U.S. armed forces will come down on you at levels never seen before. However, we can easily get a deal done between Iran and Israel and end this bloody conflict. I'm not sure how easy it's going to be. The problem is Iran and the United States had 5 rounds of talks, and that's where the enrichment level came up. And it was reported secretly that the administration was going to allow around 3% enrichment. The Obama administration allowed 3.67%, mainly for civil nuclear enrichment for nuclear energy, not close to the level that's needed, which is 90%. Now, you could say, well, they would lie about their numbers, and that's why Trump originally wanted to rip up the deal in 2018 that Obama signed. And certainly liberals are now coming out and saying, well, that's the reason this is happening, because the original Obama nuclear deal got ripped up. However, there was significant support around ripping up that deal because it was seen as very weak. There was very little oversight from foreign countries and independent bodies in terms of the nuclear enrichment. Everyone thought Iran was already lying about their numbers. And there was also a period in which the deal would expire. And so Trump wanted an indefinite deal with Iran to where it never ended. And he also apparently, and this is where the argument was, he wanted zero enrichment. When he talks about them not having a nuclear bomb, well, if they have 3.67% enrichment, then that's them technically not having a nuclear bomb. But you could argue, well, they'll lie about their numbers. They're not going to disclose things. And with Israel, it's more. They want the entire government gone. Israel does. And so that's where we're there's this haziness with what the administration was trying to negotiate with Iran in terms of the enrichment levels, because it was reported that, well, secretly the Trump was like, well, you can have your 3% enrichment. It seemed like there was going to be some compromise, and then Trump immediately came out and said, no, it's zero enrichment. So, and then Trump here says, and this is to where, all right, now Trump is insinuating if there's some type of, I mean, we've heard about the rumors of a false flag, people talking about terrorists being let into the country under the Biden open border. And if there's some type of thing that happens in the United States and Iran is blamed, it's going to be a mess on X. Everyone's just going to claim it's a false flag by Israel. And so, I mean, we can see the writing on the wall here, no matter what happens, no matter if it is or isn't. I'm just saying what's going to happen if something like that, if an attack happened in the United States, if Israel or if Iran closes off the Strait of Hormuz, it's going to be a huge issue. There's going to be direct U.S. involvement. I think the United States would send a convoy of ships into the strait, and they would be engaged with Iranian assault and aerial battery. And so this is the big issue. So what is oil at? $73? The last time I checked, it was at $73 a barrel. It's certainly gone up. And if this can be solved quickly somehow, which it seems like a Hail Mary at this, and the problem with Trump is he's talking about all these deals. Where is the deal? We haven't seen, I mean, Russia, Ukraine, a lot of the trade deals. You could say, well, we got one with China. We'll see. But it's like he keeps talking about all these deals that are happening. We need to get to some of them. And he had a phone call yesterday with Putin. He said he talked with Putin for an hour on his birthday. Putin wished him a happy birthday, and he was talking about, well, we talked about both the wars. Well, that's a red flag right there. There's potentially two hot wars. Whether or not you want to call Israel, Iran yet a war, it would be in its infancy, and there's certainly strikes back and forth. But we did just have a situation with Pakistan and India to where it was a week-long thing. Nobody would classify it as a war. So I'd say let's wait on that. Let's wait on it, but it's certainly trending in that direction. You can see this update. Iran rushes to other countries seeking a ceasefire with Israel, hopes for U.S. involvement in talks. Trump's senior official quote, "We remain committed to negotiations and hope the Iranians will come to the table soon." Well, I mean, that would be a good report from the Jerusalem Post if it's true. Iran is seeking a potential ceasefire with Israel, hoping for U.S. involvement to mediate the talks there. And so that's really the big stuff. So right now, we'll see what happens. There's going to be a lot of mixed signals. There's going to be a lot of reports that say one thing and then say another. People talking about, well, Israel was hit really hard. Tel Aviv was hit very hard last night. There are photos that show rubble in Tel Aviv, and Iran certainly responded strongly. The question is, when you're talking about the initial nuclear deal, it seems very unlikely, because Trump's number one goal, he says, is that Iran doesn't have a nuclear bomb. Israel's number one goal is to topple their government. So the question is, or at least, I mean, at the absolute least, they would want to weaken Iran severely with the help of the U.S. in terms of the weapons. And so what happened? Why would the question is why would Iran really negotiate right now when they're at such a position of weakness? I mean, the only hope is that maybe they've been hit so hard to where they've got no other choice. They certainly do a lot of trade in terms of exporting oil to China. And so the question is, will the Chinese support them? I know China came out with a statement and they said they want peace. They want some type of a ceasefire agreement soon. The other problem is with these ceasefires, they get broken so easily. So it's like even if you get a ceasefire in place, maybe you can get a ceasefire in place to restart negotiations. I mean, for the administration, the best thing that happens here is we get the ceasefire as soon as possible. We want the ceasefire as soon as possible. Now, when it comes to what Iran agrees to, at this stage with where their military is, I would imagine they're really not going to agree to any type of deal to where they don't have the capacity to enrich uranium because they just got attacked by Israel. So the question for the administration is how do you get the Iranians to the table? And the only likely way would be significantly more escalation, I would say, unless I'm misreading it and Iran is already severely weak. Now, it has come out like 60-70% of the citizens within Iran do not like their leadership, do not like their government. And so that also has to be taken into account when it comes to potentially trying to do a regime change. But there's going to have to be significant U.S. help. The other problem is, and this is just an observation, you've got Republicans for the 3 years or the 2 years that Biden was in during the war with Russia, claiming that the U.S. was involved and we were helping Ukraine because we were giving them weapons and missile packages and $180 billion, whatever it is. And now you've got the same thing likely setting up with Israel and the Trump administration. And Trump is saying, well, no, it's not a war. Well, what was Biden's relationship with Ukraine? What was the Democrats' relationship with Ukraine? I mean, this is the same thing. And you could say, well, there's no boots on the ground. That's our red line. I mean, that cannot happen. That would be a huge issue. And you could already say this is a huge issue, especially if it's extended. Because Trump ran on ending the war in Eastern Europe. It's still going on. Now we've got another war in the Middle East. It's been reported, and I wanted to believe Trump. I really did, and I still do. I do think Trump wanted diplomacy. But the problem is, if you get a deal, and I know some people are saying, well, Iran wasn't going to accept any deal that they wanted. I don't know what number they wanted in terms of their enrichment, but if you're negotiating, you would have to figure Iran would have to know there's going to have to be some compromises. So if Trump had a 3% enrichment deal on the table, you got to take that. I'm sorry. And there would have been significantly more oversight. People are worried about Iran possibly making a nuclear bomb under the table, but it's like, this is the exact type of thing. And then you've got people saying, well, Iran is extremely dangerous. They're not compatible. And I understand that, but why would we care about that being 8,000 miles away? This is the same thing we've discussed, ever since the other Middle Eastern wars, and hopefully learning from them. It's like we're just doing the bidding of Israel, and that's why a lot of young people have a huge problem with this. So we'll see what happens. I don't know how Iran is going to come to the table unless they're pressured to where they think they're going to be absolutely destroyed. But even if that's the case, I mean, that becomes more of a suicidal regime to where they throw caution to the wind and do whatever they want. But maybe there can be something that's worked out. There were strikes exchanged. Okay. Israel hit Iran. Iran hit Israel. My guess is Israel's going to come back with force. But hopefully, maybe if they stop after hitting each other, we can do some type of ceasefire. But I don't see if Trump is talking about no. I mean, you have to. The only way to do it is to make Iran fear so much that they would be okay with doing some type of negotiation that would appease the U.S. It seems unlikely that we're gonna find that. I mean, now it is being reported, but these are just reports, and we've heard a lot of different things that end up being false. But it is being reported. Iran does want negotiations, so if that's true, that's great. But it doesn't seem like they would get anything close to a deal that they would want, especially now after Israel struck them. And then they responded and struck areas within. And they're both going to claim, well, they're hitting civilian areas. They're doing... the point is there's strikes between both sides, and right now Trump is saying he's trying to keep this clean bill and say we're not involved. We know the U.S. is involved. The U.S. sends Israel money. They send Israel military aid packages, and intelligence is shared routinely. So there is an involvement, and the question is, do they start getting funding packages from Congress? Just like we saw with Ukraine. So we will have to see. The hope for the administration's sake, what we need an immediate ceasefire. We really do. And so maybe Iran, I mean, could you imagine if Iran said, all right, no Mas, we can't do it? I mean, that's a huge win. It is. It's a huge win. But how likely are they that this is not more prolonged? That because if you want their nuclear program gone, maybe a show of force is the way in which it kind of moves along negotiations to force Iran to say, all right, we're close to being wiped out. We need to make a deal. But the problem is, if they're close to being wiped out, why would they agree to give up uranium enrichment? So you can see kind of the issue here. And there, again, the whole idea of what Trump is going to dispute, and I think they're going to try and say, well, we're not involved unless we decide, to help with ground troops, to deploy troops, which, again, it just cannot happen. It really cannot. U.S. rejected Netanyahu's request to join war directly, Axios. That's good. That is good. And it was like an official thing. I mean, again, it's like, are we not already in this to a degree? I mean, if you want to say, are we in the war with Ukraine against Russia? Because this is what conservatives argued. What you give Ukraine money, you give them intelligence, you're involved and you're helping them, we should just stay out. Well, this is the same thing. So is Trump going to argue they're staying out? Are they really staying out? I mean, so see, there's a bit of a contradiction there. So we will see how this develops. If it's true that Iran does want to negotiate and they're able to work this out somehow, and Iran's been battered so hard and they're worried, there also have been reports, and we knew these were going to come out, that they were threatening to blockade the Strait of Hormuz. If that ends up happening, oil is going to spike like crazy, and the U.S. will likely have to be directly involved. So, and if Iran did that, you'd think Iran would not want to involve the U.S. There's also reports that Iran hit a U.S. embassy. I believe that's false, because if that were true, I'm guessing it'd be bigger news. But if there is any strikes by Iran onto the U.S., Trump is saying we will be significantly involved. And that's why everyone's saying they're thinking about a catalyst domestically, possibly in terms of an attack by an Iranian national. And then you've got the whole idea of, oh, is it a false flag? All of this, it's a complete mess. It is a complete mess. Because right now there needs to be a catalyst for Israel. Trump is 1 foot in, he's 1 foot out. And the catalyst would be some type of attack, whether it's from their military, whether it's a domestic player who's already been let into the country. This is the big issue. And so we'll have to see how this all develops. But either way, guys, make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.